Alrighty, today we're going to be doing a full reshuffle of my gym. I've decided to put down flooring across the entire gym and to remove this platform and convert it into a standalone deadlift platform, which will take up less room. That means I need to move everything from this gym, which is going to be tough, but we're going to give it a go.
This likely wasn't the most optimum way to complete this project, but I tackled it in 2 stages. The first stage, I unloaded and moved the power rack so that I could take apart the platform. As I mentioned, I'll be cutting down this platform into a smaller, standalone deadlifting platform. My goal is to reuse the best plywood from the bunch and also trim the main top piece, keeping my little 2014 logo in the middle for nostalgia. With the platform taken apart, I laid down 3 of my old horse stall mats and moved the rack back into place on top of them. This is kind of a trial run on how things will feel with the new mats later on. While it was a lot of work going back and forth, I wanted this gym to stay functional over the weeks in between these 2 stages of the project. Using my DeWalt table saw, I cut down some of these 3/4 inch pieces of plywood to 3 by 8 foot sections. While I did these cuts on my own, I'd advise getting an extra set of hands when dealing with full sheets of plywood. I took the appropriate measurements and then cut down the top plate as well, taking a little bit off of the top and the bottom of the piece. The construction of the new deadlifting platform is very straightforward. I first laid down 2 pieces of 3 by 8 plywood on top of each other, centered them, and then screwed them together with 1 1/4 inch screws. I made sure not to put fasteners where I think the weights will be impacting the platform. After that, I attached the centerpiece using 2-inch screws, and I did my best to keep it centered. Finally, I cut down the old horse stall mats to fit on the sides. We'll be doing a bunch of horse stall mat cutting later in the video, but the basics are to scribe in your cut line with the razor, elevate this scribed line by placing something under the mat, and then cutting down this line until you're through the mat. With the cutting done, I then attached the mats with 1 1/4 inch fasteners to the platform.
So I went to Tractor Supply this morning and purchased 11 3/4 inch horse stall mats for my space. I'm going to be shuffling all this stuff around in order to get those horse stall mats installed on the floor. I'll have some carpet tape and things of that nature to try to keep the mats from moving around a lot and to keep the gap in between the mats as small as possible. But I think the real way that I'll achieve this is by kind of precision cutting the mats so that when they're put in, they're actually pushing up against each other a little bit and keeping those gaps as small as possible. At the end, I'll go over the cost of the project and my overall thoughts on how the install went. So with that, let's get started.
Anyone who's had the privilege to handle 4x6 horse stall mats knows that they can be a bear to maneuver. I did notice that these new mats offer a different structural design than the old ones. The older mats were flat on the bottom, and these seem to have circular risers. From a performance perspective, I haven't noticed a difference when standing on them, and I think that this additional space under the mats was added to increase airflow and reduce moisture retention. I did my best to lightly clean these mats outside, and then once again unloaded and moved my power rack out of the way.
So I have this air quality meter here in the gym, and you can see at the bottom right, we have our TVOC. I'm hoping this stays 0000 as I put these mats in here, since they do off gas a little bit, and I'm curious to see if I have any major changes on the air quality in the gym.
I got the first row installed without issue, and then temporarily used my old cut piece by the door frame. When getting the power rack back into position, I lined it up with the middle of the 3 mats, which is slightly offset to the left away from the door. I found that having a little extra space on the door side was handy with my setup. I'll note here that my rack is no longer bolted down to anything like it was with the platform. I haven't had any movement or creep in its position on these mats. Next, I shuffled everything out of the way for the second row and started pulling in the new mats. One tip that I'm using here from Coop at Garage Gym Reviews is to offset the mats so that the seams are not in line. He noted that this would produce a cleaner look overall, and I 100% agree. Each of these rows will require a custom piece. My goal here was to get the piece cut as closely as possible to the measured dimensions so I can put the mats under slight compression when tapped into place. Overall, the strategy was effective, and I avoided the need to use carpet tape under the mats. As mentioned earlier, the first thing that you need to do when modifying these mats is to get a good scribed cut line with your razor blade, and then put something under the mats to create an arc with the scribed line at the apex. This makes cutting through the mats much easier since the walls of the cut aren't grabbing onto the sides of your razor blade for each stroke. This next clip is another angle to help explain this process.
So step one, you get a little scribe line in here. And you can see it doesn't really go that deep through the rubber, but when you put it over something like a 2x4, you can see it now, and your razor will stay in that groove as long as you have it sitting over something like this.
With the piece cut, I shimmied it into the spot. Here I'm using a hammer to tap down the edge, but I found that a 2x4 used like a spear worked better.
All right, I just got this row in, and I noticed that this piece right here is probably one of the worst pieces. It has some, I guess, degradation of the rubber on this one side. I don't know if it was on top or what, but you can kind of see in the seam here, this side is messed up and this side is good, or this other piece is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that piece and put it in a corner, because this corner or this piece going along the wall is rarely ever going to be seen. And that guy right there is in the middle of the gym. So I'm going to swap those two right now, so I don't regret keeping that there for years.
If I were to do this project again, I would have paid more attention to the quality of each mat ahead of time and tried to organize them intelligently, but this on-the-fly method got the job done. The hardest part of reshuffling everything into row 2 was getting the rolling plate storage with 1,000 pounds on it up onto the mat. I was too lazy to unload it, so I built a little rubber ramp using flooring samples and focused on one wheel at a time. As a side note, if y'all are looking for a cheap plate storage solution, I recently did a review of this one from Lion's Cool and can say that I've been pretty impressed with it thus far. Once again, I am staggering the mats on this next row so that the seams do not align with each other, and then cut my custom piece on the far side. With 3 rows done, we're on the home stretch here, and I take a few minutes to get everything reshuffled. Using a little leverage, I get the new deadlift platform up onto row 3 and out of the way. At this point, I actually realized that I underbought the mats and I needed 3 more to finish the project. Luckily, I still had my original 3 mats, so I decided to use them against the garage door under the deadlifting platform area. I was happy to see that their thickness was comparable with the new mats. It's also worth noting how much the manufacturing process has changed with these mats over the years. These old mats have a rougher, more coarse-grained surface than the new mats and seem to retain a higher amount of moisture if something is spilled on them. They also have more light-colored flecking in them, so visually there will be a difference between the old and new mats. On the plus side, they've had years to off-gas, so they won't be contributing to the rubber stench that these new mats will have. With the last row in, I went about getting things organized. Note that when moving around this 1,000-pound plate storage, some gaps in the mats open up a little bit as it traverses the gap. This is just the nature of a heavy object on wheels rolling across rubber and moving it slightly. I've heard that using Simple Green helped with the off-gassing smell, so I sprayed the mats with it and used a steam mop to clean up the flooring. I think it did help slightly. I'll be researching some other solutions to accelerate this off-gassing, but if y'all have any methods, please let me know of them in the comment section below. On the air quality meter, I didn't really notice any differences on the readings like I expected to see, which I guess is a good thing. I consulted ChatGPT and it said observing no changes on the meter's TVOC wasn't surprising since most consumer-grade meters don't pick up sulfur and amine-based odorants. These horse stall mats do reek, and I'll be happy when the bulk of the off-gassing subsides.
Alrighty, so I've had a few weeks to use this flooring, and I gotta say, I love it, but with a few caveats. I'll go ahead and start with the bad. The smell will hit you when you come through the door like a wrecking ball. It is wretched, and it's gonna take a while for that to dissipate, from what I understand. I can say that over the course of the last couple of weeks, I have noticed the smell start to dissipate, but it's still pretty strong even 3 weeks after the install. With the bugs starting to die off this winter, I think I'll start opening up the garage door and put some box fans in here to put airflow across the top of the mats and hopefully accelerate the off-gassing of these mats over the next few months. I've tried the Simple Green, it didn't really help that much. So hopefully some additional ventilation and time will solve that problem. So on to the things that I like. One of the biggest improvements of having this floor in here is everything being on the same plane. It makes the place feel much bigger, especially around the sides of the squat rack. With the platform having the level changes so close to a wall, it made the space feel confined. But now that everything's on the same plane, loading the plates on and off the bar, you just feel like you have much more room to move. Also, that plays into not having sectioned off areas of your gym to do specific movements. A lot of movements you can just do anywhere now. As far as the aesthetic goes, having the mats in the gym makes it look way better, way more uniform and professional. The gapping between the mats really isn't bad. I didn't feel the need to put carpet tape under the mats or to put Gorilla Tape on top of the seams, just because of the nature of cutting everything close to fit has kept the seams like super small. So lastly, let's talk about the price. The 11 mats that I purchased cost me about $643 after taxes, and note that I did not wait for the sales that Tractor Supply has periodically on these mats. That puts my costs at around $58.50 per mat, and considering that I used 14 mats for the whole project, the total cost for a 336 square foot gym is around $819 or $2.44 a square foot. I priced out some rolled 3/8 of an inch thick mat from Flooring Incorporated, and the price per square foot worked out to around $2.88 after shipping. While this isn't bad, note that you are getting less rubber per dollar in this scenario, and the protection level will be slightly less than a 3/4 inch mat. The benefits of going with the rolled mat is obviously it looks more professional, you have color options, and the quality of rubber is probably higher, so the smell should be less than the horse stall mats that you're getting from Tractor Supply. So in a nutshell, if you can deal with the 4x6 seams between the mats and the multi-month off-gassing process, then the horse stall mats are likely your best option from a cost perspective for your home gym. So with that, if y'all got something out of this video, please hit that like button below and consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, train hard.